So this is a video I never wanted to make, but I think now's the perfect time. Almost 6 months ago, I made my first video on Halo Infinite, where despite a lot of people saying the game was dead, I argued that I thought it could still make a comeback. I mean, after all, the game at its core is a really solid experience, and all the game really needed was a steady flow of content to save it. Halo Infinite's launch was an incredible start, but the game quickly stagnated and then ultimately declined with a lack of really any meaningful content or updates. And the ones promised to us were constantly moving further and further into the future. It was really hard to get excited for Halo. But unlike many, I was still hopeful that if 343 really locked in on what was obviously wrong with the game that they had, they could make a full recovery like we've seen with so many other titles. And yet I'm sat here today absolutely dumbfounded how a company could be handed one of the biggest franchises ever, produce one of the most popular and successful multiplayer betas we've seen in years, and somehow make every possible wrong decision. Because while Ubisoft and EA have huge issues we all know about and meme on, at least with the microtransactions and various other shifty practices that those companies do, they're at least doing it intentionally and trying to achieve their goals. From missing deadlines, lackluster content, and now an inconsistent idea on what the staple franchise they've been given is even about, I think I've finally lost faith. In the wise words of Charlie Moby Huge Critical, Halo's dying of thirst and 343 won't even piss in its mouth. And while that could semi-be forgivable if it was an original IP or anything other than that, this is one that the head of Xbox himself, Phil Spencer, has once said is so important that if we lose our way with Halo, we lose our way with Xbox. And I'm sorry, Phil, but I'm here to give you a fucking map. Because at this point, I think you would have been better off just giving the keys to your Ferrari to your little kid, instead of making the chain of decisions that led to Halo being at the point where it's at. And let's make no mistakes, it's a series that used to have a regular 200k plus players in the late 2000s, in a time where you not only had to pay for the game, but then pay for the subscription fee to play the game online. The barrier to entry was insane, but it didn't matter because people loved these games. And yet, after 3 commercial flops, countless amounts of fan outrage, some fair and some not, it just becomes too clear and painful to say, but Halo Infinite's become the textbook example of how to not only mishandle a live service game, but completely botch an entire franchise. And that's why I think it's so important we take this video to see how exactly this could happen, and how I've gotten to the opinion that 343 just sucks. I think a lot of people are unaware of how much of a shit show Halo Infinite's development was, and how we probably should have seen this coming. In order to do that, I think it's important we take a second and roll back the clock to a time where Will Smith was respected. Oh, wow.
It's rewind time.
And our future president was more worried about jamming out to Hotline Bling than whatever the hell he's up to now. Of course, I'm talking about the year of 2015. Oddly enough, Halo Infinite, which at the time was just called Halo 6, was announced before Halo 5 was even out yet, which, looking back on it's pretty bold, but for a franchise as time-tested as Halo, it didn't really seem that odd. Of course it's gonna be a success, it's Halo. How could a game like this ever flop? Yikes. Almost immediately following the release of Halo 5, it was clear that fans weren't exactly thrilled about the game they got, and it was met with unseen criticism for a franchise this stable. Sure, people didn't like Halo 4, but it was never this bad. Some people said it felt too much like Call of Duty or Overwatch. Some people really hate the story. But regardless of who you ask, most people either haven't played Halo 5 or just don't like it. And it got to the point where Microsoft had to formally acknowledge fan disappointment, and not only that, but promise to make the situation right and focus more on Master Chief, which really put it into people's heads that Halo was about to return to form, and in a big way. This Halo 6 project that was announced had to be perfect. And while Microsoft was trying their hardest to clean up the mess, 343 was sweating pretty hard in the corner. Not only did it just put out some pretty murky dog water, but now it was all or nothing. And almost immediately following that promise from Microsoft, 343 warned fans that despite their excitement, Halo 6 was a long ways away to launch with the next Xbox to the distant year of 2020, a year where nothing bad could happen. And while this certainly wasn't the normal with Halo, a franchise that usually releases a game every 2 to 3 years, I think that announcement probably did more to raise expectations than lower them. I mean, with that much time in development and Microsoft's full attention and hopefully budget, it just seemed like a recipe for success, right? That's what we all thought, and when the game's reveal trailer finally debuted 1 year after the announcement in 2016, it was given massive applause and hype, but Microsoft and 343 remained oddly quiet about what the game exactly was going to be and what that return to form really meant. And while that doesn't sound too bad only 1 year out of the announcement, things clearly were wrong when, after another 2 years of relative radio silence goes by, a pretty shocking rumor starts to float around about the game. Guys, this just in, Halo 6 might be a battle royale.
What?
Oh Jesus Christ. As you could guess, people expecting a return to form for the franchise were not at all happy hearing about this rumor, and while we can't fault 343 for the rumor starting, it did go unaddressed for a total of 3 months before they finally officially addressed it and ultimately denied that the game was gonna be a battle royale. And while that certainly might have appeased some, it was immediately undermined just 1 year later, with the announcement that Halo Infinite's lead producer was leaving 343 abruptly. And this wasn't just any worker, this was a lead producer and someone who was very specifically named a key to Halo Infinite's development and success. This doesn't exactly scream like a team who is thrilled to be working on the project and excited to get it out. Fears from this announcement were only later fueled 1 year later, now 5 years into the development of this game, when the gameplay trailer finally dropped, and fans were not exactly happy with what they were shown, and it got pretty ugly pretty fast. You see, where 343 messed up with this trailer is, rather than capitalizing on 5 years of waiting and making Halo fans feel like all of it was worth it, they ended up releasing a trailer so bad that they had to genuinely make a blog post apology addressing the game's issues and ultimately delaying the game from 2020 to 2021. And this is what confuses me the most, because how do you mess up the trailer? This is the part where you get to lie to the consumer. We see it time and time again. This is just gaming marketing 101, and you can't even do that? Really? Spider-Man even did that, and that's a good game. And while I completely understand the unexpected impact that COVID had on the development of countless games, Halo Infinite was a game that was already in development for 5 years. So now, because of one bad gameplay trailer, what was supposed to be the Xbox Series X's premier launch title, something that would have undoubtedly helped Microsoft sell more consoles, was pushed on a shelf, despite now, again, 5 years of development time. Looking back on it, it's with this exact decision, it became clear that 343's issues weren't just cracks, because it seems that 343 might be one of the worst managed companies ever. After those years of silence and a pretty shoddy trailer, a report from Thurott really started sounding the alarm about what exactly 343 was. And I can only say I wish I found this report before I started researching for this video, because it's insane. Not only did the report reveal that Tim Logo, the game's creative director, left the company that previous year, it also revealed that 343 was cutting a lot of corners and outsourcing a lot of the development of the game to third-party contractors, which is basically hiring a smaller dev team to help work on some aspects of your game, and then after the job you've asked them to do is done, they leave and go to another company. And while that certainly isn't unusual to use in the gaming industry at all, the volume at which Halo Infinite was using it for its development was apparently insanely high according to people working on the staff, and that led to a huge amount of issues for a game that was inevitably a live service title, because divvying up work to somebody else is completely fine for a lot of solo and finished experiences, but when you suddenly need to go back and keep adding to a system you haven't designed, you can see where that gets pretty confusing pretty quickly. I'm sure we've all played Minecraft with a friend who's really into redstone, but every time you go and look at it and he tries to explain to you how it works, you're just confused at the mess in front of you. That's exactly what happened with Halo Infinite and all of its updates moving forward. People who were hired and had to jump on the project had to relearn all the systems, and when something broke, they didn't know how to fix it. And it was no wonder that a few months after this report, the director of 343 himself, Chris Lee, announced he was leaving the company, and now suddenly the main person who was pushing for the game's focus and return to form was gone, and the impact of his and so many others' departures was impossible to see in the moment, but became very, very clear once Halo Infinite moved into its first release. By now, we all know how this went. Halo Infinite launched as a multiplayer-only beta at first, and people were blown away. The gameplay was both fun and simple to get into. There were no perks or attachments or loadouts to muddle the experience. You would just hit play, choose a game mode, and jump in. And the entire time you're playing the game, you're thinking in the back of your head, oh my god, this is just the beta. Yeah, there's only a few maps right now, but once this game gets going, this is gonna be incredible. Man, I can't wait for this season to drop and have so much new content to play with. Halo's gonna be great, except that content never came. And despite being labeled as a live service game, 343 really hasn't put that much content into the game. And in the past year, I've seen a lot of people get pretty mad at this free-to-play model and blaming it for the game's failure, but it's not that Halo Infinite's bad because it's free-to-play. It's bad because it's one of the worst free-to-play experiences I've ever seen, and just reading reeks of greed. There's been this really obvious move towards switching all multiplayer games to free-to-play after the success of Fortnite, and I completely get that. After all, if I saw the amount of money that Fortnite was pulling in each year, I would definitely want a piece of that. But the biggest thing all of these companies are missing is that with Fortnite, the gameplay experience still comes first. You're not playing the game just so you can Kamehameha Rick Sanchez as Goku, but because the core game itself is not only really fun, but that fun is constantly supported by the updates and features that come out. It's all about preserving the casual, fun experience of the game, and it's kind of no wonder that Halo Infinite's in the shape that it's in when 343 puts out statements like Halo's always been a competitive shooter and it's about competition first. Look, I'm gonna be real with you guys. I love playing Halo Infinite competitively. I played on my school's university team and was constantly looking for ways to make our team better, but not only is that really exhausting, it also wasn't fun. Some of the most fun I've had in Halo isn't in these competitive matches, but just in silly custom games or just kind of digging around and having a good time. But with Halo Infinite, that experience just isn't there by default. Imagine if Fortnite, a game with one of the biggest esports scenes out there, was only developed with the pro scene in mind. There wouldn't be a no build mode or free to play mode or really any of the experiences that are just about hanging out and having fun. They're games after all. They can be competitive, but that doesn't mean they always have to be. It's really unfortunate that at this point, 343's kind of stuck with their pants down, because now even if they learn the lesson and see what fans really want, they're cutting a rat's nest of their own design. Due to that previously mentioned contract work, a lot of the people coming onto the project now have to relearn the systems before they could even start developing for the game, wasting huge amounts of time that have resulted in these huge delays and updates, but it's really spending time that the game just doesn't have. In their own words, Halo fans have run out of patience, and it's really no wonder that in the wake of Bonnie Ross, Halo Infinite's head and founder stepping down this week, that we're apparently seeing a huge shakeup inside of 343 about who's managing what and who's doing whatever. But at what point is it too little too late? I think the best thing 343 could do here is honestly just get Forge out as soon as possible and hope the community can build up itself. I mean, it worked for modded Minecraft, but I think they've burned up all the goodwill they have in the community. At the end of the day, it's really going to be up to Microsoft if 343 lives or dies, and I'm fine with that. But as always, I'd love to know your opinion and what you thought of the video. This was definitely a lot of fun for me, and it was basically some mini investigative journalism, which was surprisingly fun. So for all the work I put into this, it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.